How to remain harmonious within ourselves, and to maintain peace and harmony around us, so that others also can live peacefully and harmoniously. When one is agitated, then, to come out of it, one has to know the basic reason for the agitation, the cause of the suffering. If one investigates the problem, it soon becomes clear that whenever one starts generating any negativity or defilement in the mind, one is bound to become agitated. A negativity in the mind, a mental defilement or impurity, cannot coexist with peace and harmony. How does one start generating negativity? Again, investigating, it becomes clear. I become very unhappy when I find someone behaving in a way which I don't like, when I find something happening which I don't like. Unwanted things happen, and I create tension within myself. Wanted things do not happen, some obstacles come in the way, and again I create tension within myself, I start tying knots within myself. 52. Throughout one's life, unwanted things keep happening, wanted things may or may not happen, and this process of reaction, of tying knots, Gordian knots, makes the entire mental and physical structure so tense, so full of negativity. Life becomes miserable. Now one way to solve the problem is to arrange things such that nothing unwanted happens in my life, and that everything keeps on happening exactly as I desire. I must develop such a power, or somebody else must have the power and must come to my aid whenever I request it, that everything I want keeps happening. But this is not possible. There is no one in the world whose desires are always fulfilled, in whose life everything happens according to his wishes, without anything unwished for happening. Things keep occurring that are contrary to our desires and wishes. So, in spite of these things which I don't like, how not to react blindly? How not to create tension? How to remain peaceful and harmonious? In India as well as in other countries, wise saintly persons of the past studied this problem, the problem of human suffering, and they found a solution. If something unwanted happens and one starts to react by generating anger, fear, or any negativity, then as soon as possible one should divert one's attention to something else. For example, get up, take a glass of water, start drinking, your anger will not multiply, you'll be coming out of your anger. Or start counting, 1, 2, 3, 4. Or start repeating a word, a phrase, or perhaps some mantra. It becomes easy if you use the name of a deity or a saintly person in whom you have devotion. The mind is diverted, and to some extent you will be out of the negativity, out of anger. This solution was helpful, it worked. It still works. Practicing this, the mind feels free from agitation. In actuality, however, this solution works only at the conscious level. By diverting one's attention, one in fact pushes the negativity deep into the unconscious, and at this level one continues to generate and multiply the same defilement. At the surface level there is a layer of peace and harmony, but in the depths of the mind is a sleeping volcano of suppressed negativity, which keeps erupting in violent explosions from time to time. Other explorers of inner truth went still further in their search. By experiencing the reality of mind and matter within themselves, they recognized that diverting the attention is only running away from the problem. Escape is no solution, one must face the problem. Whenever a negativity arises in the mind, just observe it, face it. As soon as one starts observing any mental defilement, then it begins to lose all its strength. Slowly it withers away and is uprooted. A good solution, avoiding both extremes of suppression and of free license. Keeping the negativity in the unconscious will not eradicate it, and allowing it to manifest in physical or vocal action will only create more problems. If one just observes, then the defilement passes away, one has eradicated that negativity, is free from that defilement. This sounds wonderful, but is it really practical? When anger arises, it overpowers us so quickly that we don't even notice. Then, overpowered by anger, we commit certain actions which are harmful to us and to others. Later, when the anger has passed, we start crying and repenting, begging pardon from this or that person or God. Oh, I made a mistake. Please excuse me. Again the next time, in a similar situation, we react in the same way. All this repenting does not help at all. The difficulty is that I am not aware when a defilement starts. It begins deep at the unconscious level of the mind, and by the time it reaches the conscious level, it has gained so much strength that it overwhelms me. I cannot observe it. Then I must keep a private secretary with me, so that whenever anger starts, he says, "Look, master. Anger is starting." Since I don't know when this anger will start, I must have 3 private secretaries for 3 shifts, around the clock, or rather, 4 of them to give staggering holidays. Suppose I can afford that, and the anger starts to arise. At once my secretary tells me, "Oh, master, look. Anger has started." Then the first thing I do is slap and abuse him. "You fool. Do you think you are paid to teach me?" I am so overpowered by anger that no good advice will help. Suppose that wisdom prevails and I do not slap him. Instead I say, "Thank you very much. Now I must sit down and observe the anger." Is it possible? As soon as I close my eyes and try to observe the anger, immediately the object of anger comes into my mind, the person or incident because of which I became angry. Then I am not observing the anger. Rather, I am observing the external stimulus of the emotion. This will only multiply the anger. This is no solution. It is very difficult to observe any abstract negativity, abstract emotion, divorced from the external object which aroused it. However, one who reached the ultimate truth in full enlightenment found a real solution. He discovered that whenever any defilement arises in the mind, simultaneously, two things start happening at the physical level. One is that the breath loses its normal rhythm. I start breathing hard whenever a negativity comes into the mind. This is one reality which everyone can experience, though it be very gross and apparent. At the same time, at a subtler level, some kind of biochemical reaction starts within the body, some sensation. Every defilement will generate one sensation or the other inside, in one or another part of the body. This is a practical solution. An ordinary person cannot observe abstract defilements of the mind, abstract fear, anger or passion. But with proper training and practice, it is very easy to observe the respiration and the sensations, both of which are directly related to the mental defilements. The respiration and the sensations will help me in two ways. First, they will be my private secretaries. As soon as a defilement starts in the mind, my breath will lose its normality. It will start shouting, "Look, something has gone wrong." I cannot slap the breath, I have to accept the warning. Similarly, the sensations tell me, something has gone wrong. I must accept this. Then, having been warned, I start observing the respiration, the sensations, and I find very quickly that the defilement passes away. This mental physical phenomenon is like a coin with two sides. On the one side is whatever thoughts or emotions arise in the mind. On the other side are the respiration and sensation in the body. Any thought or emotion, whether conscious or unconscious, any mental defilement manifests in the breath and sensation of that moment. Thus, by observing the respiration or sensation, I am indirectly observing the mental defilement. Instead of running away from the problem, I am facing the reality as it is. Then I will find that the defilement loses its strength, it can no longer overpower me as it did in the past. If I persist, the defilement eventually disappears altogether and I remain peaceful and happy. In this way, the technique of self-observation shows us reality in its two aspects, outside and inside. Previously, one always looked with open eyes, missing the inner truth. I always looked outside for the cause of my unhappiness. I always blamed and tried to change the reality outside. Being ignorant of the inner reality, I never understood that the cause of suffering lies within, in my own blind reactions. It is difficult to observe an abstract negativity when it arises. But now, by training, I can see the other side of the coin, I can be aware of the breathing and also of what is happening inside me. Whatever it is, the breath or any sensation, I learn to just observe it without losing the balance of the mind. I stop multiplying my miseries. Instead, I allow the defilement to manifest and pass away. The more one practices this technique, the more one will find how quickly he or she can come out of the negativity. Gradually the mind becomes freed of defilements, it becomes pure. A pure mind is always full of love, detached love for all others, full of compassion for the failings and sufferings of others, full of joy at their success and happiness, full of equanimity in the face of any situation. When one reaches this stage, then the entire pattern of one's life starts changing. It is no longer possible for one to do anything vocally or physically which will disturb the peace and happiness of others. Instead, the balanced mind not only becomes peaceful in itself, it helps others to become peaceful also. The atmosphere surrounding such a person will become permeated with peace and harmony, and this will start affecting others too. This is what the Buddha taught, an art of living. He never established or taught any religion, any ism. He never instructed followers to practice any rites or rituals, any blind or empty formalities. Instead, he taught to just observe nature as it is by observing the reality inside. Out of ignorance, one keeps reacting in a way which is harmful to oneself and to others. Then when wisdom arises, the wisdom of observing the reality as it is, one comes out of this blind reaction. When one ceases to react blindly, then one is capable of real action, action proceeding from a balanced, equanimous mind, a mind which sees and understands the truth. Such action can only be positive, creative, helpful to oneself and to others. What is necessary, then, is to know thyself, advice which every wise person has given. One must know oneself not just at the intellectual level, at the level of ideas and theories. Nor does this mean to know oneself at the devotional or emotional level, simply accepting blindly what one has heard or read. Such knowledge is not enough. Rather, one must know reality at the actual level. One must experience directly the reality of this mental physical phenomenon. This alone is what will help us to come out of defilements, out of sufferings. This direct experience of reality within one's own self, this technique of self-observation, is what is called vipassana meditation. In the language of India in the time of the Buddha, pasan plus or minus meant to look, to see with open eyes, in the ordinary way. But vipassana is to observe things as they really are, not just as they seem to be. Apparent truth has to be penetrated, until one reaches the ultimate truth of the entire mental and physical structure. When one experiences this truth, then one learns to stop reacting blindly, to stop creating defilements. Naturally, the old defilements are gradually eradicated. One comes out of all miseries, and experiences happiness. There are 3 steps to the training which is given in a Vipassana course. First, one must abstain from any action, physical or vocal, which disturbs the peace and harmony of others. One cannot work to liberate oneself from defilements in the mind while at the same time continuing to perform deeds of body and speech which only multiply those defilements. Therefore, a code of morality is the essential first step of the practice. One undertakes not to kill, not to steal, not to commit sexual misconduct, not to speak lies, and not to use intoxicants. By abstaining from such actions, one allows the mind to quiet down. The next step is to develop some mastery over this wild mind, by training it to remain fixed on a single object, the breath. One tries to keep one's attention on the respiration for as long as possible. This is not a breathing exercise, one does not regulate the breath. Instead, one observes the natural respiration as it is, as it comes in, as it goes out. In this way, one further calms the mind, so that it is no longer overpowered by violent negativities. At the same time, one is concentrating the mind, making it sharp and penetrating, capable of the work of insight. These first 2 steps of living a moral life and controlling the mind are very necessary and beneficial in themselves. But they will lead to self-repression unless one takes the 3rd step, purifying the mind of defilements, by developing insight into one's own nature. This really is vipassana, experiencing one's own reality through the systematic and dispassionate observation of the ever-changing mind-matter phenomenon manifesting itself as sensations within oneself. This is the culmination of the teaching of the Buddha, self-purification through self-observation. This can be practiced by one and all. The disease is not sectarian, therefore the remedy cannot be sectarian, it must be universal. Everyone faces the problem of suffering. When one suffers from anger, it is not Buddhist anger, Hindu anger, Christian anger. Anger is anger. Due to anger, when one becomes agitated, it is not a Christian agitation, or Hindu, or Buddhist agitation. The malady is universal. The remedy must also be universal. Vipassana is such a remedy. No one will object to a code of living which respects the peace and harmony of others. No one will object to developing control of the mind. No one will object to developing insight into one's own reality, by which it is possible to free the mind of negativities. It is a universal path. It is not a cult. It is not a dogma. It is not blind faith. Observing the reality as it is, by observing truth inside, this is knowing oneself at the actual, experiential level. And as one practices, one starts coming out of the misery of defilements. From the gross, external apparent truth, one penetrates to the ultimate truth of mind and matter. Then one transcends that and experiences a truth which is beyond mind and matter, beyond time and space, beyond the conditioned field of relativity, the truth of total liberation from all defilements, all impurities, all suffering. Whatever name one gives this ultimate truth is irrelevant. It is the final goal of everyone. How to defend the Republic. The following is a translation of an article originally published in the September 1999 issue of the Vipavayan +/- Patrick +/-. It was the first year of the dispensation of the Dhamma. After attaining perfect enlightenment at Bodh Gaya and setting in motion the wheel of Dhamma at Varanasi, the Buddha came to R+or- Jagaha, passing through Bodh Gaya on the way. Likaf squared Ma ± Li, the commander of the Baji Republic, met the Buddha there. He benefited from his teaching and became his first Likaf squared disciple. Inspired by him, many Likaf squared S of B's ± L squared became devoted disciples of the Buddha within a few days. Ma ± Li's skill in the art of warfare made the army of B's ± L squared a major force in the region. The Likaf squared S had great respect for him. Unfortunately, he lost both his eyes. Therefore, they appointed him the chief military advisor and designated a brilliant Likaf squared youth named S squared Ha as the commander of the army. At that time S squared Ha was a prominent disciple of another spiritual teacher. But when he saw that many Likaf squared S of B's ± L squared had become the followers of the Buddha, he came, after initial hesitation, to meet the Buddha out of curiosity. After talking to him, he was deeply influenced and became his devoted follower. Like Ma ± Li, S squared Ha fulfilled the responsibility of commanding the army with great skill and diligence even after becoming a follower of the Buddha. The Buddha did not teach his lay devotees to neglect their familial, social and official responsibilities. On the contrary, he would encourage them to gain more proficiency in them. Once the Buddha came to B's ± L squared and stayed at the S ± Ra 1/2 Dada stupa. Many Likaf squared S came to meet him and 60. Saluting him, they sat on one side. There was a constant threat of an attack upon B's ± L squared because the neighboring kingdoms were envious of its prosperity. The Buddha was aware of this. He also knew about the mutual antagonism between Magadha and B's ± L squared. Being born and raised in the S ± Kya Republic, he understood the inherent advantages and disadvantages of a republic. Therefore, for the security of the Baji Republic, he gave 7 practical instructions which would make them unassailable. These teachings were 1. Likaf squared S. As long as the Bajians maintain their unity and meet regularly, they will remain invincible. The members of the state parliament of the Baji Republic, called R+or-J+or-S, would meet in the assembly hall regularly and discuss the security of the country. If they failed to assemble because of laziness, the enemies outside the border would get an opportunity to attack. On seeing that the R+or-J+or-S were not alert, these enemies would intrude into the country and loot the people. But when the R+or-J+or-S were alert, as soon as they were informed of any intrusion into the country, they would immediately send the army to rout the enemy. Then the intruders would understand that they would not be allowed to ravage the country. As a result, they would scatter and flee. 2. Likaf squared S. As long as the Bajians meet together in unity, rise in unity and perform their duties in unity, they will remain invincible. During times of danger, when the warning trumpet was sounded, every R+or-J+or- would immediately come to the assembly hall. If any R+or-J+or- was having his meal, he would leave it unfinished. If he was adorning himself with clothes and jewelry, he would come to the assembly hall at once, in whatever clothes he was wearing. There, everyone would sit together, and after deliberation and discussion, a unanimous decision would be taken. Thus, everyone would rise in unity. Thereafter, whatever action had to be taken would be accomplished unitedly. Everyone, he instructed, should be eager to protect the country. Whenever there is an announcement from any part of the country that the enemy has invaded any town or village, and when the people are asked, who will go there and crush the enemy, brave shouts of me first, should echo throughout the country. During times of danger, all citizens should consider it their fundamental duty to defend the country. They should never fail to fulfill this duty. 3. Likaf squared S. As long as the Bajians do not transgress their ancient principles of governance and system of justice, they will remain invincible. If any R+or-J+or- arbitrarily increases taxes in his region or imposes fresh taxes, this will be a violation of the constitution and will cause discontent. Discontented people will not help during times of crisis. Or if any R+or-J+or- does not collect tax in his region out of favoritism, it will result in depletion of the state treasury. The army will not be able to procure necessary weapons. If the army does not get its salary on time, its strength will diminish. There should never be any violation of the ancient penal code of the judiciary. According to the penal code, any person arrested on suspicion of having committed any crime has the right to appeal up to 7 levels. He can appeal in turn to the Minister of Inquiry, the judicial magistrate, the chief magistrate, the jury, the commander, the crown prince and the king. If proved innocent in the course of any of these appeals, he is released. If he is ultimately proved to be guilty, he is punished. If he is punished in this way, the lawbreaker and his family as well as the people in the community will not have any grievance. But if he is punished without a fair trial and is not given an opportunity to appeal, it will be in violation of the judicial system, and people will become discontented. They will not give their full cooperation to resist the enemy in times of danger. If the government is run without the slightest violation of the judicial system, the people will be contented and will gladly help in the defense of the country. 4. Likif squared S. As long as the Bajians revere, respect, venerate, and honor their elders and pay regard to their words, they will remain invincible. If the respect for experienced elderly retired R plus or minus J plus or minus S of the country is maintained, if they are not ignored, then the country will continue to benefit from their long experience of governance and security of the state. The security of the Republic can be strengthened with their experience about the way they united at the time of danger and saved the country, the way they deployed the army in the battlefield and destroyed the army formations of their enemies. If their advice is ignored, the country will be deprived of the benefit of their vast experience. 5. Likif squared S. As long as the Bajians protect their women and do not abduct them, they will remain invincible. The intoxication of power is extremely potent. If any R plus or minus J plus or minus intoxicated by power harasses the womenfolk of others, their families will become unhappy and turn into enemies of the state. When the country is attacked, they will join the enemy and help in the destruction of the country to avenge the wrong done to them. If the R plus or minus J plus or minus S refrain from immorality, the security of the country will not be endangered. 6. Likif squared S. As long as the Bajians venerate the objects of worship inside and outside their republic, and maintain monetary support to them, they will remain invincible. There were many sects in those days too, with their own temples and places of worship. A wise nation should keep all the people happy and satisfied. They should not be harassed, compelling them to become enemies of the state. Their places of worship should be provided adequate protection. Whatever financial assistance they have been receiving from the state should never be stopped. Otherwise, not only will the deities of those places of worship become displeased, even more dangerous will be that their devotees will become enemies of the rulers and the state. They will join hands with the enemies invading the country. Therefore, for the security of the country, it is necessary to give suitable protection to these places of worship. 7. Likif squared S. As long as the Bajians provide protection and support to saints and arahants, they will remain invincible. Saints and arahants leave the country where they are not allowed to live peacefully, are disrespected, and even physically attacked. Moreover, saints and arahants from outside do not enter such a country. As a result, people are deprived of discourses on true Dhamma, and become immoral. Corruption increases and peace, prosperity and harmony are lost. The lack of virtuous people weakens the country. Therefore, the protection of saints and arahants is always necessary for the security of the country. The Buddha stated that as long as the Bajians followed these 7 instructions, they would remain undefeated and the Baji Republic would prosper. Truly, following these instructions, the Bajians remained invincible for a long time. Years later, the scene of a tragic historic incident comes before us. The Buddha was about 80 years of age. 45 years of his dispensation of Dhamma was about to be completed. Leaving R plus or minus Jagaha, he set out on his last journey on foot. The king of Magadha, AJ plus or minus Tasadu, sent his minister, Vasik plus or minus Ra, to the Buddha with the news that Magadha was going to attack their enemies, the Likif squared S, soon. Without saying anything to Vasik plus or minus Ra, the Buddha asked 3/4 Nanda, who was standing nearby, 3/4 Nanda, are the Bajians following the 7 instructions that I had given them years ago perfectly? 3/4 Nanda said, yes Lord, they are following them perfectly. Upon this, the Buddha said, as long as the Bajians follow these 7 instructions, they will remain undefeated. Vasik plus or minus Ra was skilled in the use of craft and deceit. He immediately understood that as long as the Bajians remained united, they would truly remain unconquerable. He postponed the attack upon the Bajians. The events that followed are the painful history of Basak plus or minus Ra's deceit and the foolishness of the Vajians, because of which their strong unity was completely destroyed. The dissension within them became so deep that they were not even able to unite to face the Magadhan army, let alone repulse their attack. The Likh-squared republic became desolate forever. They forgot the beneficial teaching of the Buddha and sowed the seeds of their own destruction. The universal teaching of the Buddha regarding the security of the Republic is just as relevant today as it was then. The danger of destruction caused by internal discord is just as relevant today. Let the India of today learn a lesson from the Vajians who forgot the teaching of the Buddha. To preserve the strength of the Republic for a long time, the seeds of dissension in the country should be removed. The issues that divide the country should be eliminated and the elements of unity should be strengthened. The country should not be divided because of sectarianism or casteism. People of different sects can live together harmoniously in any country as long as they do not consider any sect as Dhamma. The difference between the two is clear. Different sects have different places of worship, different philosophical beliefs, different rites and rituals, as well as different clothes, festivals, traditions, food habits and fasts. Every sect may carry out its sectarian practices freely on the condition that the festivities of any sect do not offend the feelings of OTHers. One should not consider any aspect of one sect as Dhamma and generate blind devotional emotion. Sects may be different and may have different aspects, but Dhamma is always indivisible. Let the knowledge of the true nature of universal indivisible Dhamma spread among the people. Living a life of morality is Dhamma. One should not do any vocal or physical action that causes harm or injury to others and affects their peace and happiness. There is no monopoly of any sect on this, it is the Dhamma of all. To live such a life, it is essential to gain mastery over the mind. Gaining mastery over the mind, controlling the mind is the Dhamma of all, it is not the monopoly of a particular sect. To gain mastery over the mind there should be a technique which is acceptable to all sects. Freeing and purifying the mind from the negativities of aversion and antagonism, one should fill it with love, affection and goodwill. This is the Dhamma of all, it is not the monopoly of any one sect. For this, one has to practice a technique which every sect can accept without any opposition. The science that India gave to keep the body healthy in the form of plus or minus sanas, yoga postures, and PR plus or minus N plus or minus Y plus or minus Ma breathing exercises is accepted worldwide because it is universal. It is not objectionable to any sect. In exactly the same way, rising above the sectarian walls of all religions, the universal Vipassana technique of ancient India, capable of controlling the mind and making it strong and healthy, has been accepted worldwide. By taking the support of this beneficent universally acceptable technique of S² La, morality, Sam plus or minus Dhi, mastery of the mind, Panyu plus or minus wisdom, and Met plus or minus compassionate love, it is possible to establish an atmosphere of friendship and mutual love and affection. This will strengthen the unity of the Republic. Like the belief in sectarianism, the demon of belief in the caste system has also been dangerous to the security of the country in the past, it is dangerous today and will continue to be dangerous in the future. This is the lethal poison that has filled the blood vessels of the nation. The sooner it is removed, the better it is for the country's security and glory. The difference between high and low will persist in society, it cannot be eliminated, but it is necessary to eliminate the existing basis of discrimination. One should not be considered high or low just because of being born from the womb of one's mother. If a person commits unwholesome actions, if he is immoral, then he is wicked, unrighteous. He has little position in society, his status is low. Similarly, if he does wholesome deeds, is virtuous, then he is a good person, a saint. He has the respect of society, his status is high. When the false belief in high and low status because of birth flourishes, Dhamma becomes weak. Then living a life of morality, that is, the practice of Dhamma, is of no importance. If an immoral person gets a high position in society because of birth, morality becomes irrelevant. If because of birth someone is considered to be of low status, there is no importance of morality for that person. If one is considered big or small, high or low, respectable or disrespectable in society on the basis of morality, then one who is low and dishonored today because he is immoral can become moral tomorrow and become high and respectable in society. When conduct instead of birth will be considered as the yardstick of high or low status in society, the progress of society will be abundant, the progress of the country will be abundant. The poison flowing through the blood vessels of the country since such a long time will turn into nectar. May the practice of the non-sectarian universal technique of Vipassana that fills one with pure Dhamma lead to all-round development of the country, instead of mutual hatred and hostility. May love, affection and brotherhood increase. In this alone lies the security of the Republic, in this alone lies the welfare and happiness of the country. Awareness of natural respiration. The following has been translated and adapted from the 6th in a series of 44 Hindi discourses broadcast on ZTV. It was originally published in the January 1999 issue of the Vipassana Plus or Minus Patrick Plus or Minus. The goal of Vipassana meditation is to purify the mind completely by eradicating all mental impurities such as anger, hatred, passion, fear, etc. For this, one must gain complete knowledge of the body, of the mind and of the mental impurities at the experiential level, which is done with the help of respiration. If one wants to understand one's own physical and mental nature, one must use a pure object of concentration, natural, normal respiration. One should not try to regulate the breath or do any breathing exercise. Nor should one repeat any word or mantra or visualize any shape, form or imaginary object along with awareness of respiration. One should observe bare respiration, as it is. When one observes respiration, one begins to understand the nature of the mind. One reality about the mind becomes very clear: the mind is very fleeting, very fickle. It wanders repeatedly from one object to another. Where does it wander? It wanders to so many objects. Even if one kept a diary, one would not be able to make a list of all the objects. But, if the meditator is attentive, he will see that the mind wanders in two areas only, either in the past or in the future. It recalls some past incident and starts to roll in thoughts of the past: this had happened, this had not happened. Suddenly it may jump to the future and start rolling in thoughts of the future: this must happen, this must not happen. The meditator observes this present reality, he witnesses. 68. The nature of the mind objectively. Sometimes the mind wanders in the past, sometimes in the future. It never stays in the present. But one has to live in the present, not in the past. The past moment is gone forever. One cannot bring back that moment in return for all the wealth in the world. Similarly, one cannot live in the future. When the future becomes the present, only then can one live in it. So one can live neither in the past nor in the future. One has to live in the present, and yet the mind constantly tries to escape into a past or future that is unattainable. One has not learned how to live, one has not learned the art of living. Life can be really lived only in the present. Therefore, the first step of this technique is to develop awareness of a present reality, the breath entering or leaving the nostrils. The breath may pass through the left nostril, through the right nostril, or through both the nostrils simultaneously. One may find that after observing one or two breaths, the mind wanders away. One accepts this fact smilingly and again brings the mind back to respiration. The mind wanders again and one keeps returning to the awareness of respiration. This does not mean that when one learns this technique one forgets the past completely or does not plan for the future. Oh no. After one learns the art of living in the present, one can easily recall things of the past whenever necessary and make suitable decisions about the future much more effectively. One has to change the mind's habit of constantly wandering in the past or in the future. One has to train the mind to remain in the present. As one continues to meditate, one recognizes the tendency of the mind to constantly roll in thoughts. Of what type are these thoughts? The meditator sees that there are only two types of thoughts. Whether the mind wanders in the past or in the future, the thoughts that arise are either agreeable or disagreeable. One is investigating the truth about oneself like a scientist, trying to understand the truth at the experiential level. One finds that whenever an agreeable thought arises in the mind about the past or the future, one feels very happy. And whenever a disagreeable thought arises in the mind about the past or the future, one feels very unhappy. When an agreeable thought of the past or the future arises in the mind and it feels pleasant, one part of the mind starts reacting: oh, very good, I want more of it, I want more of it. And this habit, wanting, continues all the time. Similarly, we find that as soon as a disagreeable thought of the past or the future arises in the mind, a part of the mind starts reacting: oh, I don't want it, I do not want it. Let this never happen. And this habit, not wanting, continues all the time. In India's ancient language, this habit of wanting, was called raga, craving, and the habit of not wanting, was called dosa, aversion. One generates these thoughts of craving and aversion continuously in the mind. Agreeable or disagreeable thoughts, either of the past or of the future, cause pleasant or unpleasant feelings and result in craving or aversion continuously. Sometimes a thought may arise in the mind, and before it is completed, another thought arises. Before that thought is completed, a third thought arises. Thoughts arise without any sequence or meaning. Such mental behavior is commonly regarded as a sign of madness. An example: a plate of food is served to a mad person who has been hungry since many days. He is happy because he was very hungry. He takes a morsel, but before he can eat, another thought arises in his mind: I am in the bathroom, I have come here to have a bath, and this is a cake of soap, and he starts rubbing the food on his body. Then another thought arises: this person standing before me is my enemy, he has come to kill me. Before he kills me, let me kill him. How can I kill him? These are hand grenades. If I throw them at him, he will die. So he throws all the food away. Such a person is called mad. A discerning meditator discovers that his mind is also full of delusions, full of ignorance. In the ancient language, this was called moha, ignorance. Because of this habit of continuously generating craving, aversion, or ignorance, the mind is unhappy and agitated. At the surface level of the mind, one tries to remain aware and to avoid generating craving and aversion. At times, one may feel that the surface part of the mind has become very wise and does not generate craving, aversion, or ignorance any longer. But this is a very small part of the mind. The larger part of the mind, its deeper layers, is generating craving, aversion, or ignorance every moment. All mental impurities arise because of the stock of these impurities in the mind. The deeper layers of the mind are unable to come out of this strong habit pattern of craving, aversion, and ignorance. During the whole day, there may be only a few moments when one is able to cut oneself off from the past as well as the future and remain in the present. The mind is fully concentrated on respiration, the truth of the present moment. There is no delusion, no ignorance. One does not generate craving for incoming breath or aversion towards outgoing breath. One simply observes the breath entering and leaving the nostrils objectively without reacting to it. In such a moment, the mind is free from craving, aversion, and delusion. It is completely pure. This moment of purity at the conscious level has a strong impact on the old impurities accumulated in the deeper levels of the mind. The burning coals of craving, aversion, and ignorance that one has accumulated within are smoldering. One has put thick layers of ash on them. The Buddha said that it is like burning coals covered by ash. It may seem that there is no fire under the layer of ash, but one is burning within because of these impurities. The contact of this internal burning with the coolness of this one moment of purity is like the contact of positive and negative forces. It produces an explosion, like the eruption of a volcano within. Some of the deep-rooted impurities may come to the surface and manifest as various physical or mental discomforts such as pain in the legs or in the head, or fear or agitation. What seems to be a problem is actually a sign of success in the meditation. When one cuts open an abscess, pus is bound to come to the surface. Similarly, the operation of the mind has started and some of the underlying pus has started to come out of the wound. Although the process is unpleasant, this is the only way to get rid of the pus, to remove the impurities. If one continues to work in the proper way, all these difficulties will gradually diminish. When one pours a handful of water on a coal stove to extinguish the fire, there is a reaction, there is a sound, chung. When cold water is poured again, there is the sound of chung, again. The hot stove will continue to make that sound until its temperature is the same as that of the water. Once this happens, it will not make any more sound when more water is poured on it. Similarly, when drops of this cool water of mental purity fall on the burning coals of the impurities within, it produces an explosion. Because of that, the meditator will feel restless. This is another reason why one is advised to learn the technique at a meditation center under the guidance of an experienced teacher. If one works according to the instructions of an experienced guide at a meditation center, one learns to be equanimous in all situations. When one learns to keep the mind balanced, the mind becomes purer and purer. The purpose of meditation is to purify the mind. The development of a pure mind results in real happiness, real peace, real harmony, real liberation. Walk the path yourself. The following has been translated and adapted from the 7th in a series of 44 Hindi discourses broadcast on ZTV. It was originally published in the February 1999 issue of the Vipauayan Plus or Minus Patrick Plus or Minus. One who goes to a meditation center to learn Vipassana should clearly understand that the first step is to objectively observe the truth about one's own natural respiration. No word should be added to the natural breath even as an oversight. One can concentrate the mind and make it calm by repeating any word. But the accumulation of defilements is blazing within, just as it did earlier. At any time, these sleeping volcanoes can erupt and overpower the mind and make one miserable. Therefore, those who want to eradicate their defilements at the depth of the mind should not use any word. In other types of meditation, the use of a word has its own benefit. But it cannot eradicate the defilements at the depth of the mind. One may repeat a word to concentrate the mind, just as a mother sings a lullaby to put her child to sleep. She keeps repeating the lullaby and the child falls asleep. In the same way, when a word is repeated, the mind will become concentrated on that. But this word becomes an obstacle in the objective observation of the truth in the present moment. I can understand this obstacle because I myself used to meditate with the help of words. This has been confirmed by the experiences of others who have faced the same obstacles. A great saint from India, Kabir, said the same thing. As one continues meditating with the help of a word, an echo 73 arises from within that is known as an ajapa japa, unchanted chant. This takes the form of a fine string and the string itself becomes an obstacle in the investigation of the truth of the universe within. Therefore, one is unable to attain the ultimate truth beyond mind and matter. Kabir says, Tagatuda, Naba Membi Nasaga. Sabad Ju Kaham Samai Re. The string has broken, it cannot remain in the universe within. How can the word that is so gross remain? Therefore, one should not use any object that will become an obstacle to future progress on this path. One has to learn the truth about oneself at the experiential level, about one's body and mind and the interrelation between these two, and about the generation, multiplication and eradication of the mental defilements. One has to observe the truth as it is, just as it is. Then, one will keep progressing. The process of respiration is related to both the body and the mind. By observing respiration objectively, the truth pertaining to both body and mind will become clearer and clearer. There may be initial difficulties. One who wants to eradicate the defilements from the depth of the mind will have to face these difficulties. The mind is so restless, so unsteady, not only at the surface level but also at the depth. Like a monkey, this monkey mind keeps jumping from one branch of a tree to another. As soon as it leaves one branch, it holds another. It is so agitated, so disturbed, so miserable. It is wild, it has to be tamed. And one has to do this work very patiently. This work is similar to the task of taming a wild animal, like a wild buffalo or a wild elephant. To tame a wild animal, a wise and experienced person works very patiently and persistently, because the wild animal does not become tame as soon as he starts the work. At home, one cannot do this work continuously. Also, one will not be able to do this work patiently in spite of the difficulties because there is no teacher to give proper guidance. But when one joins a course at a Vipassana center, one is able to work continuously and despite the difficulties, one keeps on making efforts to tame the mind. It is not possible for one's mind to become totally concentrated and free of defilements as soon as one starts working. The mind will wander repeatedly. And when it wanders, it will be overcome by craving, overcome by aversion. And because of this, the meditator will become more and more agitated. Oh, what kind of mind am I carrying? It is so full of craving, so full of aversion. It does not stay in the present at all. Our teacher says that one should live in the present, but my mind does not stay in the present at all. It is so miserable. One has lost patience. One has lost equanimity. One has lost the balance of one's mind. How can the work proceed? One has to work very patiently. If the mind wanders, one accepts the present reality that it has wandered. If the mind is full of craving, one accepts the present reality that it is full of craving. One merely accepts, at this moment, my mind is full of craving. Or, at this moment, my mind is full of aversion. Thus, one keeps observing the state of the mind, as it is. One observes the natural respiration dispassionately, objectively, without any personal identification. Something has happened at the physical or mental level and one understands, I am observing, one starts the work in this way. As one progresses, one will reach a stage where this I will disappear, this am observing will also disappear. Something has happened and one understands, it is being observed. There is no observer, there is only objective observation. Influenced by Vipassana, Patanjali, an Indian sage who lived a few centuries after the Buddha, said, Draw micro ads squared matra, in seeing there should be only seeing. Later, this objective observation also ends, and bare awareness remains at the level of direct experience. This awareness is sam plus or minus d micro high, right understanding, right knowledge. This eventually takes the Vipassana meditator to the final stage of full liberation. Initially, one has to pass through many difficulties. When a wild buffalo or wild elephant enters any human habitation, it causes so much harm, so much destruction, so much panic. But after one has tamed the wild beast by working very patiently, it is of such immense help. Its entire strength is utilized constructively. The mind is more powerful than 1,000 elephants. When it is destructive, it does more harm than 1,000 wild elephants. The same mind, when tamed, will be of much more service than 1,000 tamed elephants. A tamed mind will cause much happiness. But one has to work very patiently. A meditator should also understand that, I have to do this work oneself. It is my responsibility. This is not out of egoism. Sometimes, because it was lost from India for such a long time, some people do not understand this technique of Vipassana properly and criticize it. They consider the idea of liberating themselves by removing their own defilements as egoistic. Oh no. This meditation technique will take one to a stage where the ego dissolves completely and there is only anid plus or minus egolessness. The idea of I, mine, my soul, will come to an end. Liberating oneself is not egoism but a responsibility, just as one bathes every morning because one is responsible for keeping one's body clean. Who else will do it? Is one inflating the ego by bathing daily? Where is the question of inflating the ego? It is one's own responsibility. If the body becomes dirty, it becomes diseased. It has to be kept free from disease, therefore, one should clean it. Similarly, the mind has become impure. Who has made the mind impure? It is one's own responsibility. One did it out of ignorance because one did not have proper understanding. Now the job of cleaning it is one's own responsibility. One has to do it oneself, no one else can do it. One often suffers from the delusion, I am so helpless, I am so weak, how can I become liberated? Someone will have mercy on me. Someone will liberate me out of compassion. Such a deluded person should understand, why should the Savior liberate me alone? Am I someone special? Just because I have become an expert at false praise, will the Almighty liberate me? Why should the Savior liberate you alone? The entire world is so miserable, and yet, He does not liberate anyone. It is clear that each person has to liberate oneself by removing one's own defilements. Each person has tied knots within, and these knots have to be untied by one's own efforts. Someone full of compassion might show us the way. One who has reached the stage of liberation by walking on the path, a Buddha, will show the way. But one has to actually walk on this path oneself. One has to cover the entire path by walking step by step. At the start, someone might compassionately say, hold my hand and walk. Someone may walk alongside for a while, but still one has to walk the path oneself. The sooner a person gets rid of the delusion that someone else will carry him or her on the shoulders to the final goal, the more beneficial it is for such a person. Why would any unseen force generate defilements in the minds of all living beings and make them miserable? One has accumulated defilements oneself, one will have to remove the defilements oneself. Someone might lovingly show us the path. As the Buddha says, Tum hi hi kika 1/2 plus or minus tapa 1/2 akkh plus or minus t plus or minus ro tath plus or minus get plus or minus. You have to do your own work, enlightened ones only show the path. The Buddha could show the path because he himself had walked the entire path and had reached the final goal. That is why he had become a tath plus or minus get plus or minus, an enlightened person. Out of compassion for all suffering beings, he lovingly explained to people that it is their responsibility to walk on the path to liberation. The sooner a person understands that one has to walk on the path oneself, the more fortunate that person is. One who hopes that someone else will liberate him because he is so helpless will never walk on the path. One will have to make the effort oneself. There will be many difficulties and obstacles on the path. One may stumble and fall, but one should get up and start walking again until one reaches the stage of liberation. An incident. The Buddha was dwelling at Savatthi, the capital of Kosala, the most densely populated city in the India of those days. Several monks and nuns as well as male and female lay people would come to his meditation center to listen to his discourses and to learn meditation. Some people came only to listen to the discourses but never put any of his teaching into practice. One such person arrived early one day and found the Buddha alone. He approached him and said, "Sir, I have a question that arises repeatedly in my mind. I am hesitant to ask when others are present. I am glad that you are alone today. With your permission, I will ask my question." The Buddha replied, "There should not be any doubts on the path of Dhamma, have them clarified. What is your question?" "Sir, I have been coming to your meditation center for many years and I have noticed that many people come to you. Some of them, I can see, have certainly reached the final stage and have become fully liberated. I can see that others have experienced a great change in their lives though they are not yet fully liberated. But sir, there are some people, including myself, who have not changed at all. They are just as they were earlier. Why should this be, sir? People come to you, a great person, so powerful and compassionate. They take refuge in you and yet there is no change in them. Why don't you use all your power and compassion to liberate them all?" The Buddha smiled. This is what he explained every day, but if someone did not want to understand, what could be done? He tried to explain again. He had different ways of explaining. Sometimes he would explain by counter-questioning. "Where do you come from?" "Savatthi, sir." "Yes, but your facial features and speech show that you are not from this part of the country. You have come from some other region and settled here." "You are right, sir. I am from the city of Rajagaha, the capital of the state of Magadha. I came and settled here in Savatthi a few years ago." "Have you severed all connections with Rajagaha?" "No, sir. I still have relatives and friends there. I have business there. I visit Rajagaha many times every year and return to Savatthi." "Having traveled the path from here to Rajagaha, certainly you must know the path very well." "Oh yes, sir, I know it perfectly. And your friends, who know you well, must know that you are from Rajagaha and have settled here. They must also know that you often visit Rajagaha and that you know the path from here to Rajagaha very well." "Yes, sir, all those who are close to me know that I am from Rajagaha and that I know the path to Rajagaha very well. Then it must happen that some of them ask you to explain the path from here to Rajagaha. Do you hide anything or do you explain the path to them clearly?" "Sir, why should I hide it? I explain to them as clearly as I can. Go towards the east from here and you will reach the city of Varanasi. Continue onward until you reach Gaya. Proceed further and you will reach Rajagaha. And do all these people to whom you explain the path so clearly reach Rajagaha." "How can that be, sir? Only those who walk the entire path will reach Rajagaha. This is what I want to explain to you. People come to me knowing that this is someone who has walked the path from here to Nib plus or minus Na and so knows it perfectly. They ask me about the path. Why should I hide it? I explain to them clearly. This is the path. On the way you will come across these stations, you will pass through these experiences. Proceed further and you will reach the stage of liberation, you will experience the ultimate truth. I explain the path very clearly. If someone is satisfied only with my explanation and bows down 3 times and says, 'Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu,' you have explained very well, sir, but does not take a single step on the path, how will he reach the final goal? One who starts walking on the path and takes 10 steps will be 10 steps closer to the final goal. One who takes 100 steps will be 100 steps closer to the final goal. And one who takes all the steps on the path will reach the final goal. You have to walk on the path yourself. All those who have started walking on the path of liberation, the path of pure Dhamma, have started walking on the path of total purification of the mind. They have started walking on the path of total liberation, the path that leads to real happiness, real peace, real harmony, real liberation. Those who walk on the path of pure Dhamma find real happiness, real peace, real harmony, real liberation from all the miseries of life. The importance of daily meditation. The following has been translated and adapted from a discourse by Goyanka to about 5,000 Vipassana practitioners at University Ground, Nagpur in October 2000. My dear Dhamma sons and Dhamma daughters, I am very happy that we have sat together and practiced pure Dhamma. Meditating together is of great importance. As the Buddha said, happy is the arising of the Buddhas in the world. Happy is the teaching of pure Dhamma. Happy is the coming together of meditators. Happiness is meditating together. 2,600 years ago, Gautama Buddha arose in this country and taught pure Dhamma, resulting in great happiness for the world. People started living in accordance with this teaching. They started meditating together just as we have done today. There is no greater happiness than this. If one meditates alone, one becomes liberated from mental defilements and becomes truly happy. But when Dhamma brothers and sisters sit together and meditate in such large numbers, if someone's meditation is a little weak, it is strengthened because the meditation of others is strong and the entire atmosphere is charged with Dhamma vibrations. Whenever possible, meditators should have joint sitting at least once a week. If in the past week anyone's meditation has become weak, it is strengthened by the group meditation and he is able to face the vicissitudes of life for the whole week with renewed strength. Every meditator has to develop the strength to face the ups and downs of life. For this, it is necessary to meditate 182 hour in the morning and evening daily, to meditate together once a week, and to take a 10-day course at least once a year. Then we will keep progressing on the path of Dhamma. Householders face many difficulties, many obstacles. What to speak of householders, even those who have renounced the household life tell me that they are not able to meditate regularly. But we must not give up in spite of all difficulties. We must meditate daily, morning and evening. We do physical exercise, yoga, jogging or walking, to keep the body healthy and strong. Otherwise, the body becomes weak and diseased. In the same way, it is even more necessary to keep the mind healthy and strong. The mind is more important. One should not allow it to become weak or diseased. Vipassana is exercise of the mind. Meditating morning and evening makes the mind strong and healthy. It is not a waste of time. We live in a complex and stressful world. If the mind is not strong, we lose the balance of the mind and become miserable. Those who do not know pure Dhamma, who have not learned this meditation, are unfortunate. But those who have received this benevolent teaching and are not using it are even more unfortunate. They have found such a priceless gem but have discarded it as if it is a useless pebble. What can be a greater misfortune? It is a matter of great fortune to be born as a human being. Only a human being can become introverted and eradicate mental defilements from the depth of the mind. This work cannot be done by animals or birds or reptiles or insects or other lower beings. Even a human being cannot do this work if he does not know this technique. One gets a human birth, finds such a wonderful technique, learns to use it, benefits from it, and still discontinues the practice. What a misfortune! A bankrupt person finds a treasure, and he discards it and becomes bankrupt again. A hungry person gets delicious food, and he discards it and becomes hungry again. A sick person finds medicine, and he discards it and becomes sick again. Very unfortunate, indeed. One should not make this mistake. Sometimes meditators come to me and say, I have stopped meditating. What to do? I am so busy. It is a poor excuse. Do we not give food to the body 3 or 4 times a day? We do not say, I am such a busy person, I don't have time for food today. This meditation that we do every morning and evening makes the mind strong. And a strong mind is more important than a strong body. If we forget this, we harm ourselves. We should never make this mistake. Even if there is too much work, we must do this exercise. Sometimes it is not possible to meditate at the same place at a fixed time. Though desirable, it is not a must. What is important is to meditate twice in 24 hours. In rare circumstances when one is not able to sit with closed eyes, one may meditate with open eyes, sitting with others with the mind directed inwards. We should not make an outward show of meditation. The others need not know that you are meditating. We may not be able to meditate as well as we could have done while sitting alone with closed eyes, but at least we have calmed and strengthened the mind a little. Without regular practice, the mind becomes weak. A weak mind makes us miserable because it reverts to its old behavior pattern of generating craving and aversion. We have got human birth. We have come in contact with this wonderful Dhamma. We have developed faith in this technique because we have benefited from it, and yet we have stopped meditating. Let us not be heedless. We are not doing anyone a favor by meditating twice a day. Our teacher has told us, so we are doing it. You are not doing your teacher a favor, you are doing yourself a favor. This is such a great teaching. When one starts feeling sensations on the body, understand, the door of liberation has opened. A person who cannot feel sensation on the body is unfortunate, the door of liberation has not opened for him. And when one learns to remain equanimous to the sensations, not only has the door of liberation opened, but one has entered it and has started walking on the path of liberation. In Vipassana we experience different types of sensations on different parts of the body and maintain equanimity towards them. A wise meditator understands from experience how the practice benefits one in daily life. Every step taken on this path takes one closer and closer to the final goal. No effort is wasted, each effort bears fruit. Lack of awareness of sensations takes us on the path of misery. Blind reaction to them out of ignorance results in misery, deep misery, dukkha samudaya g plus or minus min squared pa micro ipad plus or minus. Awareness of sensations and equanimity towards them takes us on the path that leads to liberation from all suffering, dukkha nirodha g plus or minus min squared pa micro ipad plus or minus. If we experience sensations and react to them, react with craving to pleasant sensations and with aversion to unpleasant sensations, we are on the path of bondage. This is the teaching of the Buddha, this is the enlightenment of the Buddha. At the time of death, some sensation will arise, and if we are not aware and react with aversion, we will go to lower planes of existence. But a good meditator who remains equanimous to these sensations at the time of death will go to a favorable plane. This is how we make our own future. Death can come at any time. We do not have an agreement with death that it should come only when we are ready. We are ready whenever it comes. This is not an ordinary technique. It is a priceless gem that can liberate us from the cycle of birth and death and can improve not only this life but also future lives, ultimately leading to full liberation. But we do not have time. We have too much work. We squander an invaluable jewel by making these excuses. Whenever there is sorrow or despair or dullness in daily life due to any reason, this technique will help us. Just understand, at this moment there is sorrow or despair or dullness in my mind, and start observing breath or sensations. The external reason is not important. The Buddha said, Sab Dhamm plus or minus Vadan plus or minus Samsara plus or minus. Whatever arises in the mind is accompanied by sensation. Whatever arises in the mind is called Dhamma. A sensation arises on the body with whatever Dhamma arises in the mind, this is the law of nature. The mind and the body are interrelated. When a defilement arises in the mind, some sensation will arise in the body. Whatever sensation arises in the body at that time is connected to the defilement in the mind. This is what the Buddha taught. One understands that there is a defilement in the mind and observes sensation in the body. One practices this thoroughly, not just once or twice but again and again. Every sensation is impermanent. So the defilement that is connected to it is also impermanent. How long will it last? We are observing sensations and also observing how long the defilement lasts. It becomes weak and ceases, like a thief who enters a house, and finding that the master of the house is awake, runs away. Take the example of anger. When anger arises due to any reason, one understands, at this moment there is anger in the mind. Now let me observe what sensation has arisen in the body. It does not matter what is the cause of this anger. One is observing sensation and understanding that it is impermanent. This anger is also impermanent. It would have increased and overpowered one completely. Now it becomes weaker and weaker and passes away. It is such a great benefit. No matter what defilement arises, whether lust or egotism or envy or fear or anything else, one does not get overpowered by it. Now that we have learned this technique, we have learned the art of living. All that we have to do is to accept this defilement has arisen. Let me face this enemy. Let me see what is happening in my body. It is impermanent, anicca, anicca. The enemy starts getting weaker and runs away. Defilements will keep coming throughout our entire life, sometimes for this reason, sometimes for that reason. When you become fully liberated from all defilements, you will become a fully liberated person, an arahant. At present, that stage is far away. Now in ordinary life, one has to face these difficulties. We have found a very effective weapon in the form of these sensations. No enemy will be able to overpower us for the whole life. How will it overpower us at the time of death? It cannot overpower us. We are the masters. This is the technique for becoming our own master. We have learned the art of living. How can there be sorrow in our lives? Sorrow is caused by defilements, not by external events. An external event has occurred, we do not generate a defilement, we do not become miserable. An external event has occurred, we generate a defilement, we become miserable. We are responsible for our misery. Unfavorable external events will continue to occur, and if we are strong and do not generate defilements, our lives will be filled with happiness and peace. We do not harm others, we help ourselves and help others. Every meditator should understand that one has to meditate regularly so that one is happy and peaceful for the whole life. All those who have come on the path of Vipassana should understand that they have received an invaluable jewel. Awaken in Wisdom. These 2 articles about wisdom were originally published in the Hindi Vipawihyan plus or minus Patrik plus or minus. They have been translated and slightly adapted. Let us liberate ourselves from the bondage of ignorance. To become liberated from ignorance means to be liberated from the bondage of dukkha, suffering, in this life, and dukkha resulting from the cycle of future births and deaths. It is ignorance that keeps us bound to dukkha in this life and in future lives. What is ignorance? It is the state of dullness, heedlessness, unskillfulness. Because of ignorance, we keep generating new SOC plus or minus R plus or minus S mental reactions, and keep defiling our minds with fresh negativities. We are barely aware of what we are doing, how we imprison ourselves with the bonds of craving, with the bonds of aversion, and how, in our ignorance, we tighten the knots of these bonds. We can eradicate ignorance by remaining aware, alert, and attentive every moment. Then we will not allow new SOC plus or minus R plus or minus S to make deep impressions on our minds like lines chiseled on granite. We will not allow ourselves to be bound by the fetters of craving and aversion. This quality of attentiveness of mind, endowed with understanding, is called Panyu plus or minus wisdom, and it eradicates ignorance at the roots. To awaken this wisdom, and to get established in it, we practice Vipassana. Yatha 1/2 care, when we walk with awareness. Yatha 1/2 T micro he, when we stand with awareness. 88. Yatha 1/2 ACCHE, when we sit with awareness. Yatha 1/2 say, when we lie down with awareness. Whether sleeping or awake, arising or sitting, in every state, we should remain aware and attentive every moment. No action of ours should ever be done without awareness. Pakaveki TV plus or minus Pakaveki TV plus or minus K plus or minus Yina, 1/2 K plus or minus Taba. All body activities should be done with full awareness. Pakaveki TV plus or minus Pakaveki TV plus or minus V plus or minus C plus or minus Ya, 1/2 K plus or minus Taba. All vocal activities should be done with full awareness. Pakaveki TV plus or minus Pakaveki TV plus or minus Manas plus or minus 1/2 K plus or minus Taba. All mental activities should be done with full awareness. Thus we should be heedful with regard to every physical, vocal, or mental action. We should examine every action. At the same time, this awareness should be endowed with Panyu plus or minus. This means that, along with awareness, we should cultivate the experiential understanding of the 3 characteristics of Panyu plus or minus, that all phenomena have the inherent characteristic of impermanence, anicca, that all phenomena which are impermanent give rise to suffering, dukkha, and that all such phenomena which are impermanent and give rise to dukkha are without essence, they cannot be I, or mine, or my soul, anit plus or minus. Once this is understood at the experiential level, one realizes how meaningless it is to react with craving or aversion, clinging or repugnance towards any phenomenon that arises. Instead, there should only be awareness and, at the same time, detachment towards every phenomenon. This is Vipassana. This is the experiential wisdom that shatters ignorance. Meditators. In the destruction of ignorance alone is our welfare, our happiness, our liberation, nib plus or minus na. The essence of wisdom. What is wisdom? Wisdom means right understanding. Knowledge of the superficial apparent truth only is not true wisdom. In order to understand the ultimate truth, we must penetrate apparent reality to its depths. A child will see precious jewels only as attractive, colored pieces of stone. But an experienced jeweler evaluates the virtues and defects in each jewel with his expert vision in order to accurately estimate its value. In the same way, the wise do not conduct a mere superficial examination. Rather, they go to the depths with penetrating wisdom and accurately perceive the underlying subtle truth in every situation. This ability to understand the complete truth accurately in every situation is wisdom. There are 3 kinds of wisdom. The first, Suda me plus or minus pan you plus or minus, is the wisdom gained by hearing or reading the words of others. The second, sin plus or minus me plus or minus pan you plus or minus, is intellectual wisdom, to test with one's reasoning and analyzing faculty whether the received wisdom is rational and logical. It cannot be said that these two types of wisdom are absolutely useless. However, because they are borrowed wisdom, usually the knowledge gained is merely intellectual and no lasting benefit is derived from it. Bh plus or minus van plus or minus me plus or minus pan you plus or minus, the third kind of wisdom, is experiential wisdom. It is wisdom manifested within ourselves based on our own experience of our body sensations. This wisdom is based on direct experience and therefore is truly beneficial. To develop Bh plus or minus van plus or minus me plus or minus pan you plus or minus, it is essential to practice S squared la moral conduct, and to develop right Sam plus or minus Dhi concentration. Only the mind established in right Sam plus or minus Dhi can understand and realize the truth as it is. Yath plus or minus Bh cubed tan u plus or minus adasana. Sam plus or minus Hito Yath plus or minus Bh cubed ta 1/2 Paj plus or minus N plus or minus T pasity. One who has developed right concentration properly understands reality as it is. The ability to see things as they really are is called vipassana, meaning to see things in a special way. Ordinarily we tend to observe only the superficial apparent truth, like the child who sees only the superficial, bright coloring and glitter of the jewels. To be able to properly observe inner truth, we need the penetrating expert vision of the jeweler. We need to see things in a special way. This special way of seeing is vipassana. This is Bh plus or minus van plus or minus me plus or minus pan u plus or minus, the development of wisdom by the practice of vipassana. It is easy to understand superficial reality, but introspection is necessary to understand subtle inner truths. Directing our attention inwards, we must explore, observe, and understand the truth within. To understand the truth within, we practice the four kinds of awareness described by the Buddha in the Ma plus or minus Satapa micro H plus or minus Na Sutta. We practice K plus or minus Nupasan plus or minus observation of the body by observing the course of events within the body with full attention. Observation of the incoming and outgoing breath is part of K plus or minus Nupasan plus or minus. Observation of the respiration leads to awareness of sensations on every part of the body. Practicing diligently, we gradually begin to experience gross or subtle sensations on every part of the body. The sensations may be pleasant, unpleasant, or neither pleasant nor unpleasant. Observing these sensations with detachment, we practice Vedan plus or minus Nupasan plus or minus observation of sensations within the body. Observing the numerous kinds of mind, sata, that keep arising from time to time, we practice Citt plus or minus Nupasan plus or minus. Observing the different contents of the mind, we practice Dhamm plus or minus Nupasan plus or minus. We give more importance to Vedan plus or minus Nupasan plus or minus because it is directly connected to the other three. Vedan plus or minus sensation is perceived by the mind, but it is experienced in the body. Every defilement in the mind is intimately connected with some sensation in the body. Therefore, when we strengthen Vedan plus or minus Nupasan plus or minus, we automatically strengthen the other three. In this way, through the practice of vipassana based upon sensations, we can observe the true nature of the mind-body, N plus or minus ma r cube pa, every moment. Gradually we develop the understanding that this body is merely a collection of subtle subatomic particles, which by nature constantly change, arising and passing away. These subatomic particles are made up of the four elements, earth, water, fire, and air. The flow of the ever-changing body stream and that of the mind stream can be observed only with the help of penetrating, piercing Sam plus or minus Dhi. Observing the mind-body, we can experience its fundamental nature of impermanence, anicca, and suffering or unsatisfactoriness, dukkha, and in the process, its nature of egolessness, anit plus or minus, becomes clearer and clearer. We begin to realize that both the body stream and mind stream are substanceless, essenceless. There is nothing in this stream of mind and matter which is permanent, stable or constant, which can be called I or mine, or which we can claim to control. In this way, we begin to learn to observe the flow of N plus or minus ma r cube pa with detachment, with impartially. The deeper the examination of the subtle sensations, the stronger our detachment. As long as there is attachment, we cannot observe the object of meditation objectively, as it is. Through the wisdom gained by practicing vipassana, our attachment becomes weaker and weaker, and we are able to observe the object of meditation more and more objectively. When one enters a dark house with a lantern, the darkness is dispelled, light illuminates the whole house and all objects in the house can be seen clearly. In the same way, the light of wisdom banishes the darkness of ignorance, and the eternal, noble truths are illuminated and are seen clearly. Through continued practice, we experience the truth of dukkha at the deepest level, how this constantly dissatisfied and discontented mind is incessantly afflicted with the thirst of craving, how this thirst is never-ending, like a bottomless pit, it consumes all our efforts to fill it. We understand the misery of our attachment and clinging to our belief in an individual ego, how our attachment to this concept of self, to our cravings and opinions keep us incessantly preoccupied and miserable. When we understand dukkha and the root cause of dukkha, we also understand the noble path which destroys all the cravings that cause dukkha, thereby leading to liberation from dukkha. As we progress on this path, we attain liberation from all suffering, nib plus or minus na. As our panyu plus or minus grows stronger and stronger through the practice of vipassana, this wisdom eradicates all delusions, illusions, false impressions, and ignorance. Reality becomes clear because false impressions are unable to stick in the mind. When panyu plus or minus becomes strong, s squared la becomes pure, the mind is purified of all defilements. In progressing on this beneficial path, we achieve the pure state of the Aryas, noble ones. We experience the joy of nib plus or minus na. The happiness gained through vipassana is superior to any other happiness. Neither the enjoyment of gross sensual pleasures, nor that of subtle extra-sensual pleasures, leads to lasting happiness. When pleasure of any kind comes to an end, the result is sorrow. And because every situation is impermanent, it is bound to change, to come to an end. When a pleasurable experience comes to an end, the mind struggles to regain it. This craving brings misery. True happiness comes only from that which remains stable. When we become used to observing with complete detachment, our faculty of observation can remain stable even if the objects of our observation keep changing. We do not become elated when we experience sensual or supramundane pleasures, nor do we cry when they pass away. In both situations we watch objectively, like a spectator watching a play. At the depths of the mind, as we observe the changing nature of even the most subtle sensations, right understanding arises about the profound truth of impermanence. We observe every changing situation with the same objective and impartial view. To see that which is apparent, that which is before our eyes, without any defilement in the mind, this is true happiness. This state has been called Ditta Dhamma Sukha Vih plus or minus Ra, the happy state of knowledge of truth. Come, let us strengthen our BH plus or minus Van plus or minus May plus or minus Panyu plus or minus through the practice of vipassana. Leaving behind the continuous struggle with cravings that cause such restlessness and discontentment, let us gain liberation from the bondage of craving. Becoming established in wisdom, let us gain liberation and attain real contentment, real happiness. Work out your own salvation. The following article has been condensed from a discourse given by S.N. Goyanka during a 3-day Vipassana course for returning students. At the surface, the mind plays so many games, thinking, imagining, dreaming, giving suggestions. But deep inside, the mind remains a prisoner of its own habit pattern, and the habit pattern of the deepest level of the mind is to feel sensations and react. If the sensations are pleasant, the mind reacts with craving; if they are unpleasant, it reacts with aversion. The enlightenment of the Buddha was to go to the root of the problem. Unless we work at the root level, we will be dealing only with the intellect, and only this part of the mind will be purified. As long as the roots of a tree are healthy, they will provide healthy sap for the entire tree. So start working with the roots. This was the enlightenment of the Buddha. When he gave Dhamma, the Noble Eightfold Path, the path of S² La, morality, Sam plus or minus Dhi, mastery over the mind, and Panyu plus or minus, experiential wisdom, it was not to establish a cult, a dogma or a belief. Dhamma is a practical path. Those who walk on it can go to the deepest level and eradicate all their miseries. Those who have really liberated themselves will understand that going to the depth of the mind, making a surgical operation of the mind, has to be done by oneself, by each individual. Someone can guide you with love and compassion, someone can help you in your journey on the path, but nobody can carry you on their shoulders and say, I will take you to the final goal, just surrender to me, I will do everything. 95. You are responsible for your own bondage. You are responsible for making your mind impure, no one else. You are responsible for purifying your mind by breaking all the bondages. No one else can do that for you. Continuity of practice is the secret of success. When it is said that you should be continuously aware, this means that you must be aware with wisdom of the sensations on the body, where you really experience things arising and passing away. The awareness of anicca is what purifies your mind, the awareness of the arising and passing away of these sensations. Intellectualizing this truth will not help. You may understand, everything that arises sooner or later passes away. Anyone who takes birth sooner or later dies. This is anicca. You may understand this correctly, but you are not experiencing it. Only your own personal experience will help you to purify your mind and liberate you from your miseries. The word for experience used in India at the time of Buddha was Vedana plus or minus, feeling by experiencing, not just intellectualization. And this is possible only when a sensation is felt on the body. Anicca must be experienced. If you are not experiencing it, it is merely a theory. And the Buddha was not interested in theories. Even before the Buddha, and at the time of the Buddha, there were teachers who taught that the entire universe is anicca. This was not new. What was new from the Buddha was the experience of anicca, and when you experience it within the framework of your own body, you have started working at the deepest level of your mind. Two things are very important for those who walk on the path. The first is breaking the barrier that divides the conscious and the unconscious mind. But even if your conscious mind can now feel those sensations that were previously felt only by the deep unconscious part of your mind, that alone will not help you. The Buddha wanted you to take a second step, change the mind's habit of reacting at the deepest level. Coming to the stage where you have started feeling sensations is a good first step, yet the habit pattern of reaction remains. When you feel an unpleasant sensation, if you keep reacting, oh, I must get rid of this, that will not help. If you start feeling a pleasant flow of very subtle vibrations throughout the body, and you react, ah, wonderful. This is what I was looking for. Now I've got it, you have not understood Vipassana at all. Vipassana is not a game of pleasure and pain. You have been reacting this way for your entire life, for countless lifetimes. Now in the name of Vipassana you have started making this habit pattern stronger. Every time you feel an unpleasant sensation you react with aversion, every time you feel a pleasant sensation you react with craving, in the same way as before. Vipassana has not helped you, because you have not practiced Vipassana in the right way. Whenever you again make the mistake of reacting because of the old habit, see how quickly you can become aware of it. Look, an unpleasant sensation and I am reacting with aversion. Look, a pleasant sensation and I am reacting with craving. This is not Vipassana. This will not help me. Understand that this is what you have to do. If you are not 100% successful, it does not matter. This will not harm you as long as you keep understanding and keep trying to change the old habit pattern. If you have started coming out of your prison for even a few moments, you are progressing. This is what the Buddha wanted you to do, practice the Noble Eightfold Path. Practice S squared LA so that you can have the right type of SAM plus or minus DHI. For those who keep breaking S squared LA, there is little hope that they will go to the deepest levels of reality. S squared LA develops after you have some control over your mind, after you start understanding with PANU plus or minus that breaking S squared LA is very harmful. Your PANU plus or minus at the experiential level will help your SAM plus or minus DHI. Your SAM plus or minus DHI at the experiential level will help your S squared LA. Strong S squared LA will help your SAM plus or minus DHI become strong. Strong SAM plus or minus DHI will help your PANU plus or minus become strong. Each of the three will start helping the other two and you will keep progressing on the path. There were many techniques in India in those days, and also later on, practicing which meditators started feeling subtle vibrations throughout the body, when the solidity of the body had dissolved. The truth is that even the subtlest vibration one can experience is still a phenomenon in the field of mind and matter. It is arising, passing, still in the field of anicca, a field of constant change. Some meditators of old tried to impose a philosophy on this subtle experience. Having reached the stage where they experience nothing but vibrations, they postulated, throughout the universe there is this subtle energy. This is God Almighty. I am experiencing this, I am with God Almighty. The entire universe is one. Every being is God. Why should I have any kind of preference or prejudice? It is a very positive mental suggestion, but it only helps at a superficial level. The reality is that even this very subtle experience is still in the field of mind and matter. It is not the ultimate truth that is beyond mind and matter. All these suggestions, however positive they may be, cannot liberate anyone. You must be with reality. All vibrations are nothing but a flux, a flow. This realization removes the deep-rooted habit pattern of reacting to the sensations. Whatever sensations you experience, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, you should use them as tools. These sensations can become tools to liberate you from your misery, provided you understand the truth as it is. But these same sensations can also become tools that multiply your misery. Likes and dislikes should not cloud the issue. The reality is, sensations are arising and passing away, they are anicca. Pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, it makes no difference. When you start realizing the fact that even the most pleasant sensations you experience are dukkha, suffering, then you are coming nearer to liberation. Understand why pleasant sensations are dukkha. Every time a pleasant sensation arises, you start relishing it. This habit of clinging to pleasant sensations has persisted for countless lifetimes, and it is because of this that you have aversion. Craving and aversion are two sides of the same coin. The stronger the craving, the stronger aversion is bound to be. Sooner or later every pleasant sensation turns into an unpleasant one, and every unpleasant sensation will turn into a pleasant one. This is the law of nature. If you start craving pleasant sensations, you are inviting misery. The Buddha's teaching helps us to disintegrate the solidified intensity that keeps us from seeing the real truth. At the actual level, there are mere vibrations, nothing else. At the same time, there is solidity. For example, this wall is solid. This is a truth, an apparent truth. The ultimate truth is that what you call a wall is nothing but a mass of vibrating subatomic particles. We have to integrate both these truths through proper understanding. Dhamma develops our understanding, so that we free ourselves from the habit of reacting and understand that craving is harming us, aversion is harming us. And then we become more realistic. See, there is ultimate truth, but there is also apparent truth, which is also a truth. The process of going to the depth of the mind to liberate yourself is done by you alone, but you must also be prepared to work with your family, with society as a whole. The yardstick to measure whether love, compassion, and goodwill are truly developing within you is whether these qualities are being exhibited toward the people around you. The Buddha wanted us to be liberated at the deepest level of our minds. And that is possible only when three characteristics are realized: anicca, impermanence, dukkha, suffering, and anit, plus or minus, egolessness. When the mind starts to become deconditioned, layer after layer becomes purified until the mind is totally unconditioned. Then purity becomes a way of life. You will not have to practice met plus or minus compassionate love, as you do now at the end of your 1-hour sitting. Later, met plus or minus just becomes a part of your life. All the time you will remain suffused with love, compassion, and goodwill. This is the aim, the goal. The path of liberation is the path of working at the deepest level of the mind. If you have started coming out of your prison for even a few moments, you are progressing. This is what the Buddha wanted you to do: practice the Noble Eightfold Path. Practice S-squared-la so that you can have the right type of SAM plus or minus DHI. For those who keep breaking S-squared-la, there is little hope that they will go to the deepest levels of reality. S-squared-la develops after you have some control over your mind, after you start understanding with Panyu plus or minus that breaking S-squared-la is very harmful. Your Panyu plus or minus at the experiential level will help your SAM plus or minus DHI. Your SAM plus or minus DHI at the experiential level will help your S-squared-la. Strong S-squared-la will help your SAM plus or minus DHI become strong. Strong SAM plus or minus DHI will help your Panyu plus or minus become strong. Each of the three will start helping the other two, and you will keep progressing on the path. There were many techniques in India in those days, and also later on, practicing which meditators started feeling subtle vibrations throughout the body, when the solidity of the body had dissolved. The truth is that even the subtlest vibration one can experience is still a phenomenon in the field of mind and matter. It is arising, passing, still in the field of anicca, a field of constant change. Some meditators of old tried to impose a philosophy on this subtle experience. Having reached the stage where they experienced nothing but vibrations, they postulated, throughout the universe, there is this subtle energy. This is God Almighty. I am experiencing this, I am with God Almighty. The entire universe is one. Every being is God. Why should I have any kind of preference or prejudice? It is a very positive mental suggestion, but it only helps at a superficial level. The reality is that even this very subtle experience is still in the field of mind and matter. It is not the ultimate truth that is beyond mind and matter. All these suggestions, however positive they may be, cannot liberate anyone. You must be with reality. All vibrations are nothing but a flux, a flow. This realization removes the deep-rooted habit pattern of reacting to the sensations. Whatever sensations you experience, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, you should use them as tools. These sensations can become tools to liberate you from your misery, provided you understand the truth as it is. But these same sensations can also become tools that multiply your misery. Likes and dislikes should not cloud the issue. The reality is, sensations are arising and passing away, they are anicca. Pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, it makes no difference. When you start realizing the fact that even the most pleasant sensations you experience are dukkha, suffering, then you are coming nearer to liberation. Understand why pleasant sensations are dukkha. Every time a pleasant sensation arises, you start relishing it. This habit of clinging to pleasant sensations has persisted for countless lifetimes, and it is because of this that you have aversion. Craving and aversion are two sides of the same coin. The stronger the craving, the stronger aversion is bound to be. Sooner or later, every pleasant sensation turns into an unpleasant one, and every unpleasant sensation will turn into a pleasant one. This is the law of nature. If you start craving pleasant sensations, you are inviting misery. The Buddha's teaching helps us to disintegrate the solidified intensity that keeps us from seeing the real truth. At the actual level, there are mere vibrations, nothing else. At the same time, there is solidity. For example, this wall is solid. This is a truth, an apparent truth. The ultimate truth is that what you call a wall is nothing but a mass of vibrating subatomic particles. We have to integrate both these truths through proper understanding. Dhamma develops our understanding, so that we free ourselves from the habit of reacting and understand that craving is harming us, aversion is harming us. And then we become more realistic. See, there is ultimate truth, but there is also apparent truth, which is also a truth. The process of going to the depth of the mind to liberate yourself is done by you alone, but you must also be prepared to work with your family, with society as a whole. The yardstick to measure whether love, compassion, and goodwill are truly developing within you is whether these qualities are being exhibited toward the people around you. The Buddha wanted us to be liberated at the deepest level of our minds. And that is possible only when three characteristics are realized: anicca, impermanence, dukkha, suffering, and anit plus or minus, egolessness. When the mind starts to become deconditioned, layer after layer becomes purified until the mind is totally unconditioned. Then purity becomes a way of life. You will not have to practice met plus or minus compassionate love, as you do now at the end of your 1-hour sitting. Later, met plus or minus just becomes a part of your life. All the time you will remain suffused with love, compassion, and goodwill. This is the aim, the goal. The path of liberation is the path of working at the deepest level of the mind. There is nothing wrong with giving good mental suggestions, but unless you change the blind habit of reacting at the deepest level, you are not liberated. Nobody is liberated unless the deepest level of the mind is changed. And the deepest level of the mind is constantly in contact with bodily sensations. We have to divide, dissect, and disintegrate the entire structure to understand how mind and matter are interrelated. If you work only with the mind and forget the body, you are not practicing the Buddha's teaching. If you work only with the body and forget the mind, again you are not understanding the Buddha properly. Anything that arises in the mind turns into matter, into a sensation in the material field. This was the Buddha's discovery. People forgot this truth, which can only be understood through proper practice. The Buddha said, Sabdham plus or minus Vedan plus or minus Samsara plus or minus, anything that arises in the mind starts flowing as a sensation on the body. The Buddha used the word plus or minus sava, which means flow or intoxication. Suppose you have generated anger. a biochemical flow starts which generates very unpleasant sensations. Because of these unpleasant sensations, you start reacting with anger. As you generate anger, the flow becomes stronger. There are unpleasant sensations and, with them, a biochemical secretion. As you generate more anger, the flow becomes stronger. In the same way, when passion or fear arises, a particular type of biochemical substance starts flowing in the blood. A vicious circle starts, which keeps repeating itself. There is a flow, an intoxication, at the depth of the mind. Out of ignorance, we become intoxicated by this particular biochemical flow. Although it makes us miserable, yet we become intoxicated, we want it again and again. So we keep on generating more and more anger, more and more passion, more and more fear. We become intoxicated by whatever impurity we generate in the mind. When we say that someone is addicted to alcohol or drugs, this is untrue. No one is addicted to alcohol or drugs. The actual truth is that one is addicted to the sensations that are produced by the alcohol or drugs. Buddha teaches us to observe reality. Every addiction will be undone if we observe the truth of the sensations on the body with this understanding, anicca, anicca. This is impermanent. Gradually we will learn to stop reacting. Dhamma is so simple, so scientific, so true, a law of nature applicable to everyone. Whether one is Buddhist, Hindu, Muslim, Christian, whether one is American, Indian, Burmese, Russian or Italian, it makes no difference, a human being is a human being. Dhamma is a pure science of mind, matter, and the interaction between the two. Do not allow it to become a sectarian or philosophical belief. This will be of no help. The greatest scientist produced by the world worked to find the truth about the relationship between mind and matter. In discovering this truth, he found a way to go beyond mind and matter. He explored reality not just for the sake of satisfying his curiosity but to find a way to be free of suffering. So much misery in every family, in every society, in every nation, in the entire world. The enlightened one found a way to come out of this misery. There is no other solution, each one must come out of misery oneself. When every member of a family comes out of misery, the family will become happy, peaceful and harmonious. When every member of society comes out of misery, when every member of a nation comes out of misery, when every citizen of the world comes out of misery, only then will there be world peace. There cannot be world peace just because we want world peace, there should be peace in the world because I am agitating for it. This does not happen. We cannot agitate for peace. When we become agitated, we lose our peacefulness. Let there be no agitation. Purify your mind. Then every action you take will add peace to the universe. Purify your mind, this is how you can stop harming others and start helping them. When you work for your own liberation, you will find that you have also started helping others come out of their misery. One individual becomes several individuals, there is a slow widening of the circle. But there is no magic, no miracle. Work for your own peace, and you will find that you have started helping the atmosphere around you to become more peaceful, but only when you work properly. The biggest miracle is changing the habit pattern of the mind from rolling in misery to freedom from misery. There is no bigger miracle than this. Every step that is taken toward this kind of miracle is a healthy step, a helpful step. Every other apparent miracle is only bondage. May you all come out of your misery, come out of your bondage. May you all enjoy real peace, real harmony, real happiness. Freedom from addiction. The following is the closing address by S.N. Goyanka at the Seminar on Vipassana for Relief from Addictions and Better Health, Dhamma Giri, 1989. Friends, you have all participated in this 10-day Dhamma seminar. This is the practical side of Dhamma. Without this experience of the practical side of Dhamma, the theoretical aspect will not be clear. Of course, it is not expected that in 10 days you will have grasped the deeper aspects of Dhamma, but you should have gained at least a rough outline of what the path is, a rough outline of what the law of nature is. I keep repeating that Dhamma does not mean Buddhist Dhamma, or Hindu Dhamma, or Jain Dhamma, or Muslim or Christian or Parsi Dhamma. Dhamma is Dhamma. And also Buddha is Buddha. Not just one person has become a Buddha. Anyone who gets fully enlightened is a Buddha. And what is full enlightenment? It is the realization of truth at the ultimate level by direct experience. When someone becomes fully enlightened, that person does not establish a particular sect or a particular religion. He just explains the truth that he has realized himself, the truth that can be realized by one and all, the truth which liberates one from all the misery. The Buddha proclaimed so clearly that one who understands the law of cause and effect understands Dhamma, and one who understands Dhamma understands the law of cause and effect. The law of cause and effect is never sectarian. The law of nature is such that the moment you generate negativity in the mind influences matter. 103. And this reaction which starts within your material structure makes you feel very agitated, makes you feel very unhappy, very miserable. You may call yourself a Hindu, or a Muslim, or a Christian, or a Jain, or a Buddhist. You may call yourself an Indian, or a Pakistani, or a Sri Lankan, or a Burmese, or an American, or a Russian. But the moment you generate negativity in the mind, the law of nature is such that you are bound to become miserable. Nobody can save you from your misery. If you do not generate negativity in your mind, however, you will notice that you are not miserable. A mind that is free of defilements, a pure mind, is again by nature full of love, full of compassion, full of sympathetic joy, and full of equanimity. If there is a practice, if there is a technique, if there is a path that can change the habit pattern of the mind, and the mind can be made pure by washing away the negativities, the defilements, then one who follows it naturally comes out of misery. One may keep calling oneself by any name, it makes no difference. The law is the law, it is universal. This is the enlightenment of the Buddha, and this is what he taught. The Buddha was never interested in a particular philosophy. Most of the time a philosophy is created by people who play games of imagination, of intellectualization. Philosophies are also created by people who may have experienced just a few steps on the path, and with whatever experience they have gained, they form a philosophy which becomes a blind belief for their followers. And this is how sects are established, based on beliefs which are imaginary, or beliefs which are created by intellectual games, or beliefs which are created by partial experience of the truth. An enlightened person understands all of this. He will never insist that people accept whatever he says because he is a realized person, a fully enlightened person. You must realize the truth for yourselves, and here is a process by which you realize the truth directly. You take steps on the path, and whatever you have realized, you accept it, and step by step, with an open mind, you keep experiencing deeper truths on the path. The path is there, so keep walking on it. Of course, there are rules which must be observed, not to get involved in any kind of imagination, not to get involved in techniques in which you try to see reality with the colored lenses of your own traditional beliefs. Otherwise the technique will not work. You just observe the reality from moment to moment, as it is, understanding its nature, its characteristic. The reality of the entire universe outside, however, can be experienced only when it comes in contact with the sense doors of your own body, because only the reality within the framework of the body can be directly experienced. And now you have started experiencing this reality within the framework of the body. As I said, in 10 days it is not expected that you become perfect in understanding this natural law. But a student who comes to investigate the truth, and works with an open mind, will at least know what the path of truth realization is. Within these 10 days one becomes convinced that the technique is right, that by proceeding on the path the subtler, finer realities pertaining to mind and matter will be realized, the interaction between mind and matter and how one influences the other, that the whole process has nothing to do with this religion or that religion, that it has nothing to do with this belief or that belief. You have worked like scientists investigating the truth by dividing, dissecting, disintegrating, dissolving and analyzing it, not merely at the intellectual level, but at the experiential level, at the actual level. You have taken a tiny step on the path to understand what this mind is, to understand what this matter is. As you proceed further, the path will lead you to the stage where you can experience the dance of every tiny subatomic particle which makes up the physical structure within the framework of your body, as well as outside in the universe, how the tiniest subatomic particle arises and passes, and is with matter, so with the mind. You keep dividing, dissecting and disintegrating, and the reality about the mind becomes clearer and clearer. A stage will come when you will be able to realize the ultimate truth pertaining to the mind, that it too arises and passes. And a time will come when you will be able to realize the ultimate truth pertaining to the mental contents which arise in the mind, the concomitants which arise along with the mind, that their nature is to also arise and pass away. This investigation of truth pertaining to matter, pertaining to mind and pertaining to the mental concomitants, the mental contents, is not merely for the sake of curiosity, but to change your mental habit pattern at the deepest level of the mind. As you keep proceeding you will realize how the mind influences matter, and how matter influences the mind. Every moment, masses of subatomic particles, cal plus or minus pa, within the framework of the body, arise and pass away, arise and pass away. How do they arise? The cause becomes clear as you investigate the reality as it is without influence from any past conditioning of philosophical beliefs. The material input, the food that you have taken, becomes a cause for these cal plus or minus pa to arise. You will also find that cal plus or minus pa arise and pass away due to the climatic atmosphere around you. You also begin to understand the formation of the mind-matter structure, how matter helps matter to arise and dissolve, arise and dissolve. Similarly, you understand how mind helps matter to arise and dissolve. You will also notice that at times matter arises from the mental conditioning of the past, that is, the accumulated sak plus or minus ras of the past, the karma. By the practice of vipassana, all of this starts to become clear. In 10 days you do not become perfect in this understanding, but a beginning is made. At this moment, what type of mind has arisen and what is the content of this mind? The quality of the mind is according to the content of the mind. For example, when a mind full of anger, or a mind full of passion, or a mind full of fear has arisen, you will notice that as it arises it helps to generate these subatomic particles. When the mind is full of passion, then within this material structure, a particular type of subatomic particles arise and there is a biochemical flow, a secretion, glandular or non-glandular, which starts flowing throughout the body with the stream of the blood or otherwise. This type of biochemical flow, which starts because a mind full of passion has arisen, is called K plus or minus M plus or minus Sava. Now, as a very honest scientist, you proceed further, just observing the truth as it is, just observing how the law of nature works. When this secretion of K plus or minus M plus or minus Sava starts, as it is the biochemical produced by passion, it influences the next moment of the mind with more passion. Thus this K plus or minus M plus or minus Sava turns into K plus or minus Mata plus or minus craving of passion, at the mental level, which again stimulates K plus or minus M plus or minus Sava, a flow of passion at the physical level. One starts influencing the other, starts stimulating the other, and the passion keeps on multiplying for minutes together, at times for hours together. The behavior pattern of the mind in generating passion gets strengthened because of the repeated generation of passion. And not only passion but also fear, anger, hatred, and craving, every type of impurity that comes in the mind simultaneously generates an plus or minus Sava, a flow. And this plus or minus Sava keeps on stimulating that particular negativity, that particular impurity, resulting in a vicious cycle of suffering. You may call yourself a Hindu, or a Muslim, or a Jain, or a Christian, it makes no difference. The process is such, the law is such that it is applicable to one and all. There is no discrimination. Mere intellectual understanding will not help break this cycle, and may even create many difficulties. Your beliefs from a particular tradition may look quite logical, yet those beliefs will create obstacles for you. The intellect has its own limitation. You cannot realize the ultimate truth merely at the intellectual level. The ultimate truth is limitless, infinite, and the intellect is finite. It is only through experience that you are able to realize that which is limitless, infinite. Even those who have accepted this law of nature intellectually are not able to change the behavior pattern of their minds, and as a result they are far away from the realization of the ultimate truth. This behavior pattern is at the depth of the mind. What is called the unconscious mind is actually not unconscious, as at all times it remains in contact with this body. And with this contact of the body a sensation keeps arising, because every chemical that flows in your body generates a particular type of sensation. You feel a sensation, pleasant, unpleasant or neutral, whatever it is, and with the feeling of this sensation, you keep reacting. At the depth of your mind you keep reacting with craving, with aversion, with craving, with aversion. You keep on generating different types of negativities, different types of impurities, and the process of multiplication continues. You can't stop it because there is such a big barrier between the conscious and the unconscious mind. When you practice vipassana you break this barrier. Without vipassana the barrier remains. At the conscious level of the mind, at the intellectual level of the mind, one may accept the entire theory of Dhamma, of truth, of law, of nature. But still one keeps rolling in misery because one does not realize what is happening at the depth of the mind. By direct experience one can understand this. Vipassana helps. And how does it help? Observing your respiration for a few days, you come to a stage where the mind becomes very sharp and very sensitive. And if you work properly, patiently and persistently, most of you in the first 10 days, others in the second 10 days, come to a stage where you can feel sensations throughout the body. Sensations are there every moment. Every contact results in a sensation, Vasapake plus or minus Vaden plus or minus. This isn't a philosophy, it is the scientific truth which can be verified by one and all. The moment there is a contact, there is bound to be a sensation, and every moment the mind is in contact with matter throughout the physical structure. The deeper level of the mind keeps feeling these sensations and it keeps reacting to them. But on the surface the mind keeps itself busy with outside objects, or it remains involved with games of intellectualization, imagination, or emotion. That is the job of your tiny mind Parada Sata, the surface level of the mind. Therefore you do not feel what is happening deep inside, and you do not feel how you are reacting to what is happening at the deeper level of the mind. By Vipassana, when that barrier is broken, one starts feeling sensations throughout the body, not merely at the surface level but also deep inside, as throughout the entire physical structure there is sensation wherever there is life. And by observing these sensations you start realizing the characteristic of arising and passing, arising and passing. By this understanding you start to change the habit pattern of the mind. Say, for example, you are feeling a particular sensation which may be due to the food you have taken, which may be due to the atmosphere around you, which may be due to your present mental actions, or which may be due to your old mental reactions that are giving their fruit. Whatever it may be, a sensation is there, and you are trained to observe it with equanimity and not to react to it. But you keep on reacting because of the old habit pattern. You sit for 1 hour, and initially you may get only a few moments when you do not react, but those few moments are wonderful moments. You have started changing the habit pattern of your mind by observing sensation and understanding its nature of impermanence. This stops the blind habit pattern of reacting to the sensation and multiplying the vicious cycle of misery. Initially in an hour you get a few seconds or a few minutes of not reacting. But eventually, with practice, you reach a stage where throughout the hour you do not react at all. At the deepest level you do not react at all. A deep change is coming in the old habit pattern. The vicious cycle is broken, the chemical process which was manifesting itself as a sensation, and which your mind was reacting to with a particular impurity, a particular defilement for hours together, is now getting a break for a few moments, a few seconds, a few minutes. As this habit pattern becomes weaker, your behavior pattern is changing. You are coming out of your misery. Again, this is not to be believed because the Buddha said so. It is not to be believed because your teacher says so. It is not to be believed because your intellect says so. You have to experience it yourselves. People coming to these courses have found by their experience that there is a change for the better in their behavior. When we talk of addiction, it is not merely to alcohol or to drugs, but also to passion, to anger, to fear, to egotism. All these are addictions. All these are addictions to your impurities. And at the intellectual level you understand very well, anger is not good for me. It is dangerous. It is so harmful. Yet you are addicted to anger, you keep generating anger. And when the anger is over, you keep repeating, oh, I should not have generated anger. I should not have generated anger. Meaningless. The next time some stimulation comes, you again become angry. You are not coming out of it because you have not been working at the depth of the behavior pattern of your mind. The anger starts because of a particular chemical that has started flowing in your body, and with the interaction of mind and matter, one influencing the other, the anger continues to multiply. By practicing this technique, you start observing the sensation which has arisen because of the flow of a particular chemical. You do not react to it. That means you do not generate anger at that particular moment. This one moment turns into a few moments, which turn into a few seconds, which turn into a few minutes, and you find that you are not as easily influenced by this flow as you were in the past. You have slowly started coming out of your anger. People who have come to these courses go back home and apply this technique in their daily life by their morning and evening meditation and by continuing to observe themselves throughout the day and night in different situations, how they react or how they remain equanimous to these situations. The first thing they will try to do is to observe the sensation. Because of the particular situation, maybe a part of the mind has started reacting, but by observing the sensation, their minds become equanimous. Then whatever action they take is an action, it is not a reaction. Action is always positive. It is only when they react that they generate negativity and become miserable. A few moments observing the sensation makes the mind equanimous and then it can act. Life then is full of action instead of reaction. This practice morning and evening, and making use of this technique in daily life starts to change the behavior pattern. Those who used to roll in anger for a long time find their anger becomes less. When anger comes, it cannot last for a long period because it is not intense. Similarly, those who are addicted to passion find the passion becomes weaker and weaker. Those who are addicted to fear find the fear becomes weaker and weaker. Different kinds of impurities take different amounts of time to come out of. Whether it takes a long time to come out of them, or a short time, the technique will work provided it is used properly. Whether you are addicted to craving, or aversion, or hatred, or passion, or fear, the addiction is to a particular sensation that has arisen because of the biochemical flow. This type of matter results in reaction at the mental level, and the reaction at the mental level again turns into this biochemical reaction. When you say that you are addicted, you are actually addicted to the sensation. You are addicted to this flow, the biochemical flow. The plus or minus sava flow of ignorance is the strongest plus or minus sava. Of course, there is ignorance even when you are reacting with anger or passion or fear, but when you get intoxicated with alcohol or drugs, this intoxication multiplies your ignorance. Therefore, it takes time to feel sensations, to go to the root of the problem. When you are addicted to liquor, or addicted to drugs, you cannot know the reality of what is happening within the framework of the body. There is darkness in your mind. You cannot understand what is happening inside, what keeps on multiplying inside. We have found that in cases of alcohol addiction, people generally start benefiting more quickly than people who are addicted to drugs. But the way is there for everyone to come out of misery, however addicted they may be, however ignorant they may be. If you keep working patiently and persistently, sooner or later you are bound to reach the stage where you start feeling sensations throughout the body and can observe them objectively. It may take time. In 10 days you may only make a slight change in the habit pattern of your mind. It doesn't matter, a beginning is made, and if you keep on practicing morning and evening, and take a few more courses, the habit pattern will change at the deepest level of the mind and you will come out of your ignorance, out of your reaction. We keep advising people who are addicted to tobacco, even ordinary tobacco smoking, that if an urge arises in the mind, not to take the cigarette and start smoking. Wait a little. Just accept the fact that an urge to smoke has arisen in the mind. When this urge arises, along with it there is a sensation in the body. Start observing that sensation, whatever the sensation may be. Do not look for a particular sensation. Any sensation at that time in the body is related to the urge to smoke. And by observing the sensation as impermanent, anicca, it arises, it passes, it arises, it passes, and in 10 minutes, 15 minutes, this urge will pass away. This is not a philosophy but the experiential truth. Similarly, for those who are addicted to alcohol or addicted to drugs, when an urge arises, we advise them not to succumb immediately, just wait 10 or 15 minutes, and accept the fact that an urge has arisen and observe whatever sensation is present at that time. And they have found that they are coming out of their addictions. They may not be successful every time, but if they are successful even one time out of 10, a very good beginning is made because the root has started changing. The habit pattern lies at the root of the mind, and the root of the mind is strongly related to the sensations on the body. Mind and matter are so interrelated, they keep on influencing each other. If this law, if this nature, is merely accepted at the intellectual level, or devotional level, the benefit will be minimal. It may inspire you to practice. But the real benefit accrues through the actual practice. It is good that all of you have come and given a trial to this technique for 10 days. If you are convinced by this trial, that it is a good path, a scientific path, that no blind faith is involved, no dogma is involved, no conversion from one organized religion to another organized religion is involved, that no gurudom is involved, that no guru will liberate you from your addictions or from your miseries, that you have to work out your own salvation, if in these 10 days you are convinced that this is a good path, then I would say that you have been successful. It is a long path, a lifetime job. Even a journey of 10,000 miles must start with the first step. For one who has taken the first step, it is possible that one will take the second step, the third step, and like this, step by step, one will reach the final goal of full liberation. May you all come out of all your addictions. Not merely addiction to drugs or alcohol, the addiction to the mental impurities is stronger than these. It has been with you for so many lives, a very strong behavior pattern, which you have to break to come out of your misery. It is a big job. A big responsibility. And you are not doing it to oblige anybody, not to please any God Almighty, not to please your teacher. You are doing it to oblige yourself, for your own good, for your own benefit, for your own liberation. And the process is such that when you start to benefit from the technique, from the path, you cannot resist helping others. It is then not merely for your own good, for your own benefit, for your own liberation, but also for the good, the benefit and the liberation of so many. So many people are suffering all around. May they all come in contact with pure Dhamma and come out of their misery. May they start enjoying peace and harmony of the liberated mind, liberated from all the defilements. 115. The merits of dana. The following is a translation of an article originally published in the September 1995 issue of the Hindi Vipawihyan ± Patrik ±. Let us practice and develop the 4 Brahmavi ± the nature of a Brahm ± hence sublime or divine state of mind, in which the 4 pure qualities are present. The Brahmavi ± Ra of infinite Met ± loving kindness, the Brahmavi ± Ra of infinite Kuru ± compassion, the Brahmavi ± Ra of infinite Mudit ± sympathetic joy, the Brahmavi ± Ra of infinite Upek ± equanimity. There is a simple way to practice and develop the 4 Brahmavi ± by the giving of D ± Na, that is pure in the past, present, and future, and pure in 3 ways. How does D ± Na become pure in the past, present, and future? When the mind of the donor is suffused with joy and delight before giving D ± Na, while giving D ± Na, and after giving D ± Na, then the D ± Na becomes pure in the past, present, and future. How does D ± Na become pure in 3 ways? When the mind of the donor is filled with benevolence, when the recipient is living a life of pure S², and when the D ± Na, irrespective of amount and value, is earned by one's own labor, honestly and through right livelihood, then the D ± Na is pure in 3 ways. D ± Na, that is pure in the past, present, and future, and pure in 3 ways, is highly beneficial. How does such D ± Na help to develop the 4 Brahmavi ± R ±? When the thing or place or facility that is given as D ± Na is not for a particular person but for the benefit and welfare of all meditators, then this D ± Na helps to develop the 4 Brahmavi ± R ±. The mind of the donor is filled with infinite Met ± when he thinks, because of my D ± Na, countless people are gaining or will gain happiness by getting this wonderful Dhamma. The mind of the donor is filled with infinite Kuru ± when he thinks, because of this D ± Na, there are so many suffering people in the world who will find a way out of their suffering, get the benefit of Dhamma and find contentment. The mind of the donor is filled with infinite Mudit ± with the thought, oh, so many people are getting happiness and contentment through the practice of Dhamma because of my D ± Na. The mind of the donor is filled with infinite Upek ± with the thought, whether anyone praises my D ± Na or criticizes it, whether I get success or failure because of this D ± Na, it is of no concern to me. My D ± Na is not for self-eulogy or for success or failure. This D ± Na, given with pure volition, is solely for the benefit of others. In this way, meditators, the 4 Brahmavi ± R are developed by giving pure D ± Na. Meditators, the Brahmavi ± R should be practiced and developed. The practice of the Brahmavi ± R is highly beneficial for us. Contact information for Vipassana centers. Courses of Vipassana meditation in the tradition of Sayagyi U Bakin is taught by S.N. Goyanka are held regularly in countries throughout the world. Worldwide schedules, information and application forms are available from the Vipassana website. About Pariyatti. Pariyatti is dedicated to providing affordable access to the authentic teachings of the Buddha, both theory Pariyatti and practice Pa Micro-Ipatti.
मैं बनाऊंगा आज मैं बनाऊंगा मैं
Even a journey of 10,000 miles must start with the first step. For one who has taken the first step, it is possible that one will take the second step, the third step, and like this, step by step, one will reach the final goal of full liberation. May you all come out of all your addictions. Not merely addiction to drugs or alcohol, the addiction to the mental impurities is stronger than these. It has been with you for so many lives, a very strong behavior pattern, which you have to break to come out of your misery. It is a big job, a big responsibility, and you are not doing it to oblige anybody, not to please any God Almighty, not to please your teacher. You are doing it to oblige yourself, for your own good, for your own benefit, for your own liberation. And the process is such that when you start to benefit from the technique, from the path, you cannot resist helping others. It is then not merely for your own good, for your own benefit, for your own liberation, but also for the good, the benefit and the liberation of so many. So many people are suffering all around. May they all come in contact with pure Dhamma and come out of their misery. May they start enjoying peace and harmony of the liberated mind, liberated from all the defilements. 115. The merits of Dana. The following is a translation of an article originally published in the September 1995 issue of the Hindi Vaipavi High and +or-Patrik +or-. Let us practice and develop the 4 Brahmavi +or-R+or-, the nature of a Brahm +or-, hence sublime or divine state of mind, in which the 4 pure qualities are present. The Brahmavi +or-Ra of infinite Met +or-, loving kindness, the Brahmavi +or-Ra of infinite Kuru +or-, compassion, the Brahmavi +or-Ra of infinite Mudit +or-, sympathetic joy, the Brahmavi +or-Ra of infinite Upek +or-. Equanimity. There is a simple way to practice and develop the 4 Brahmavi +or-R+or- by the giving of D +or- Na, that is pure in the past, present, and future, and pure in 3 ways. How does D +or- Na become pure in the past, present, and future? When the mind of the donor is suffused with joy and delight before giving D +or- Na, while giving D +or- Na, and after giving D +or- Na, then the D +or- Na becomes pure in the past, present, and future. How does D +or- Na become pure in 3 ways? When the mind of the donor is filled with benevolence, when the recipient is living a life of pure S², and when the D +or- Na, irrespective of amount and value, is earned by one's own labor, honestly and through right livelihood, then the D +or- Na is pure in 3 ways. D +or- Na that is pure in the past, present, and future, and pure in 3 ways is highly beneficial. How does such D +or- Na help to develop the 4 Brahmavi +or-R+or-? When the thing or place or facility that is given as D +or- Na is not for a particular person but for the benefit and welfare of all meditators, then this D +or- Na helps to develop the 4 Brahmavi +or-R+or-. The mind of the donor is filled with infinite Met +or- when he thinks, because of my D +or- Na, countless people are gaining or will gain happiness by getting this wonderful Dhamma. The mind of the donor is filled with infinite Kuru +or- when he thinks, because of this D +or- Na, there are so many suffering people in the world who will find a way out of their suffering, get the benefit of Dhamma and find contentment. The mind of the donor is filled with infinite Mudit +or- with the thought, oh, so many people are getting happiness and contentment through the practice of Dhamma because of my D +or- Na. The mind of the donor is filled with infinite Upek +or- with the thought, whether anyone praises my D +or- Na or criticizes it, whether I get success or failure because of this D +or- Na, it is of no concern to me. My D +or- Na is not for self-eulogy or for success or failure. This D +or- Na, given with pure volition, is solely for the benefit of others. In this way, meditators, the 4 Brahmavi +or-R+or- are developed by giving pure D +or- Na. Meditators, the Brahmavi +or-R+or- should be practiced and developed. The practice of the Brahmavi +or-R+or- is highly beneficial for us. Contact information for Vipassana centers. Courses of Vipassana meditation in the tradition of Sayagyi U Bakin is taught by SN. Goyanka are held regularly in countries throughout the world. Worldwide schedules, information and application forms are available from the Vipassana website. About Pariyatti. Pariyatti is dedicated to providing affordable access to the authentic teachings of the Buddha, both theory Pariyatti and practice Pa Micro-Ipatti. A non-profit educational organization, Pariyatti is sustained by contributions from individuals who appreciate and want to share the incalculable value of the Dhamma teachings. We invite you to visit to learn about our programs, services, and ways to support publishing and other undertakings. Much merit and gratitude to the anonymous donors who specifically contributed to fund this reprinting of Meditation Now. Pariyatti Publishing Imprints. Vipassana Research Publications focus on Vipassana meditation as taught by S.N. Goyanka. BPS Pariyatti Editions, selected titles from the Buddhist Publication Society, co-published by Pariyatti for the Americas. Pariyatti Digital Editions, audio and video titles. Pariyatti Press, inspirational writing by contemporary meditators. Selected works from Pariyatti Publishing. The Discourse Summaries by S.N. Goyanka Karma and Chaos by Paul R. Fleischman, M.D. The Gem Set in Gold by S.N. Goyanka The Life of the Buddha by Bhikkhu Nu Plus or Minus Amoli Cultivating Inner Peace by Paul R. Fleischman, M.D. The Path of Purification by Buddhaghosa The Noble Eightfold Path by Bhikkhu Bodhi. Pariyatti. 867 Larman Road, Onalaska, Washington 98570 USA. Tel. 360.978.4998.